Hello, today we are going to be doing two different things with some jade. I've got this plant which has been living in the basement and it's gone relatively dormant. We're going to be fixing it up and getting it ready to transition to a very active phase and to a new life outside for the next 4 or 5 months. And then the second thing we're going to be doing is combining these two small jade plants into one nice attractive pot. I bring you in for a little bit of a close-up. You can see with this big pot here, we have these old leaves that are graying, and actually they kind of look crystalline. They're hard as a rock. I'm going to start by removing them from the plant itself and from the bed, the topsoil. I want to get rid of them entirely because I'm not sure if they have any disease in them. You know, they've got this whitish color to them and spots. And to me, that's all too reminiscent of some disease that some of my plants have had in the past. So I think it's just safe to get rid of it. I'm outside here, so I'm going to just add those into my compost and all will be well and done. I think anything that might be ailing this jade plant isn't going to affect any of the fruits and vegetables in my garden. Along with the brown leaves, I'm taking off anything that's just a little loose. So kind of giving it a shake and seeing what's happening. Over the winter, I kind of want to show you the base here. At the end of the season last year, I let this sit outside a little bit too long and it suffered from a cold snap, which is really bad for jade plants. Essentially, this is all water inside the stems, and it froze once, or almost froze. It was kind of on the fence. And that, when the frozen crystalline structure thaws, it's just flaccid, and it induces death. And one of these stems here died. You can see that's the base of it. But here we see this being an opportunistic plant. And from the main center stem, we've got a lot of new growth, and we've even got a new stem forming here on the bottom. And in time, this plant is going to fill in the space, the void that's being left by the other stem that we had to get rid of. Okay, everything has been cleaned out in this plant. Now I'm just going to rough up the base a little with my hand, or maybe gently with some tools. And I'm going to add some compost to the top of this. I don't know if this is necessarily a recommended method for jade plants because they do prefer soil that is nice and loose with good drainage because of the area of the world where these plants evolved. That's the kind of soil that they're native to. But so the main base that I have in here is a cactus succulent mix, but I tend not to feed my plants with anything chemical based. I'm just going to be feeding it with compost. And so in order to do that, I just wanted to rough up the top, add some compost lightly to it, and then water it in. And essentially this will be good to go. We just have to help it find a home in the yard. This compost that I have, I left outside, has been living outside for a while. And we had a nice rain shower go through last evening. And so it's nice and moist. And since this plant hasn't really gotten more than a cup of water a month, I think I'm not going to water it after putting this compost on, just because it's nice and moist still. Now, compost itself is really good for moisture retention, which you don't necessarily want with a jade plant, but since I'm just putting a fine layer on the top, the only effects that I'm going to get are the nutrients from the compost seeping down deeper into the plant, and then the main bed of soil that's on here will be good for wicking away that water and keeping the plant itself nice and dry. Now we've got these two little clippings which I cut off from a plant, oh gosh, that I was given maybe 6 years ago. These all just started from essentially what I would do is when a part of the plant got too long, I would snip it off and let it go to root. And once it started rooting, I would put it in a pot, and these grew from it. I want to say these are probably 2.5 or 3 years old at this point. I have not watered these at all in 3 weeks. And so the soil is nice and dry, and it's detaching from the pot easily, as you can see. All right, in order for me to stay in frame, I think I'm just going to work on this side of the table. I've got this nice, larger blue pot that I ended up finding at a Habitat Restore. So this was used, well, actually it was never used. Somebody probably bought it or got it as a gift, never used it, and donated it. So I got a very nice new pot inexpensively. I'm using this Miracle-Gro cactus, palm, and citrus potting mix. This is what I've used in the past with great success, and it's been sitting outside, and it's time for me to use it up. So I'm just going to fill this bad boy up. If you wanted on the bottom, you could put some rocks, because, I mean, the roots aren't going to go extremely deep. Also, this is your time now if you want to mix in some coarse sand or some perlite. Perlite is really good for drainage. Again, just to make a nice arable soil, the kind of soil that succulent roots like to live in. I don't have any perlite on hand. I used it for other things in my raised beds, but since this is already a mix geared specifically for these kind of plants, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to take these and put them in now. A close-up here should showcase this pretty nicely. I didn't actually fill the pot all the way up to the top with the soil, so what I'm doing is kind of taking my pucks and just pressing them on, and I'm going to fill in around that. Now, the design that I want to have with this is a large intertwined knot when all is said and done. I just think that will look the coolest, and ultimately I think when you have a jade plant that has a really nice center stem structure, the whole thing is better supported. So as these are weaving in and out of each other, they'll create essentially a unified center body, and it'll look cool and it'll be well supported. Now we just backfill with soil. And as we're backfilling, just like we'd be doing for an annual vegetable or flower, we want to make sure that we're pressing the soil down firmly, because roots don't grow in air. Man, some people just don't get that. You know, when I drive by houses or when I go on walks and I see freshly planted flowers, and after a while start to see them die, you can tell, you can almost see like the square of soil that they came in, whatever plastic from the store, and the people just plopped them in the ground and didn't compress the soil or didn't break up the root beds, anything like that. It's really, really frustrating. So do the right thing. Make sure your plant is firmly in place, and you'll get many, many years of enjoyment out of it. Now, I'm not adding compost to this. Since this is coming from a pre-made soil mix by Miracle-Gro, I'm sure it's got plenty of stuff inside of it. And now that this has been transplanted into a space where the roots aren't being root bound and growing in a circle, this is really going to take off. Well, I have learned from previous trial and error that since these were living in the basement for the last several months, getting indirect sunlight, they do not appreciate being transplanted outside or taken outside and put in direct sunlight right away. It really shocks them. So I've learned that these thrive, though, in my backyard with diffuse sunlight. So this is southern facing for me. I'm looking at the camera, I'd be looking south. The sun tracks like this, and I've got a 2-story house right here, and this is, you can't tell because of the overcast, but much of this is shaded throughout the day. If it gets sunlight, it's very brief, and it's low angle sunlight, early morning or late evening. And these jade plants seem to do just fine with that. So once we get tables out here, these will probably live on the tables, but for now, I think they're just fine on the ground, and they will add to the beauty around it. And over the next several weeks, these are really going to grow. And this one in particular, I think you'll be really surprised by. Maybe we'll do another video at the end of September or the beginning of October when I start taking these in, and you'll see that this is really filled in all around. So what do you think about my methods for both transplanting and relocating jade plants? Have you had similar experiences with bleaching them in the sun or causing any damage? What do you think about my potting soil techniques? If this has been helpful, let me know down below. And as always, thanks a lot for watching. Happy gardening. Bye.